Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin Shaw, Alex Wolf. Today we are joined for the third time in a row. You should know his name at this point. It's our guy Prez from over at the Strickland, and we are continuing to talk skill developments, how Mitchell Robinson can make a leap with some simple additions in his own game and some help from his guards, and then Quentin Grimes, why he has tons of untapped potential and how an old Evan Fournier trick could really unlock it. That next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because that would, of course, make you an everydayer and therefore one of our best friends. But if you really want to be one of our best friends, you'll subscribe to Subtext, because that means you can actually text us, right? Which I think that's kind of a prerequisite to high levels of friendship. The number and the link to join the Subtext are both below on our episode description, both on YouTube and in podcast form. And we'll keep you abreast of the latest rumors, our takes after games, our takes on any news coming out of the Knicks. And then you can be proactive and text us any questions you have. It's super, super fun. I'm really excited to get started on it and to get more FaceTime, or at least some more text time with all of you guys. But who would you be texting? I'm Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to call my own shot. I think this might be my favorite of the three parts, because Mitchell Robinson, he just doesn't get enough love, and he gets plenty of it in this episode. So we'll get into it right now on Locked On Knicks. Prez, I want to get to your third and final skill improvement, and it is one near and dear to my heart, because I have spent my 4 years on this podcast railing against the injustice that Mitchell Robinson has had to, the injustices, I should say, that he's had to deal with his whole career of playing with generally terrible law passers, a team full of guys completely disinclined to throw him the basketball, and sometimes with good reason, because he can really just kind of catch and dunk. And Alex, maybe you'll talk about how he could do more in the future. But I think he's gotten screwed out of maybe averaging an extra 4 points per game for his career. And you think, or maybe you just hope, that Jalen Brunson and Immanuel Quickley can do a better job of hooking him up and hooking Isaiah Hartenstein up this year.
Yeah, IQ and Brunson as our main ball handling guards. My third thing that I hope for in terms of player development is them finding him inside. It could be for oops, it could be for dump off passes. Again, I know a lot of our offense is like, just don't worry about that. Just go score, and Mitch will get the ball if you don't, and that's fine, and that's how we're gonna roll. Like, that's cool, but it's very stunning to me that RJ Barrett led the team in assists to Mitchell Robinson, given that Randall obviously had the ball a ton. Jalen Brunson not only had the ball a ton, but in the new year pretty much drove like 15, 20 times per game. RJ and IQ. RJ had more drives per game than IQ because he played more. In the second half of the season, IQ had, I think, a little bit more actually as his playing time ticked up. So it's just one of those things that Brunson and IQ aren't bad passers, but this is just one pass that they can both work on. Brunson is hard because he's short, and because a lot of his drives aren't necessarily like normal basketball player drives where someone starts far from the hoop and then goes close to the hoop. Because Brunson's like, I'm going down, and then I'm stopping, and then I'm pivoting, and then I'm turning, and then I'm spinning, and then I'm faking. So, maybe it's hard to keep track of where Mitch is and where the other center, the defensive center, is among all those pivots and fakes and stuff like that. So again, this is more just like, it would be nice. It's not something he desperately needs. And then IQ just, as part of his, he's gotten so better so fast. Whereas like when he was first on the Knicks, he wasn't really driving all the way to the rim. He was just driving for the floater. And then last year he was like, oh my God, I'm really good at driving and finishing now. So he would like fall. He's like the first player I've seen who's a good shooter who falls in love with driving. Like, you know how people are like, oh, they fall in love with the jump shot. IQ probably the first NBA player to fall in love with driving, even though he's a good shooter, where he would they would go under screens and he's like, nope, I'm still driving. And, he would miss Mitch sometimes, but I also can forgive IQ a little bit because he's new to that, right? This is the first year of his pro career where he's like a legitimately good driver and finisher. So the next step for him is improving on the reads he can make on those drives. And to your point, Gavin, if we could just get Mitch an extra alley-oop per game here or there, especially versus really bad teams, like let's feed the big man, man. Let's reward him. Let's get him some easy baskets out here. Like he deserves it. He won us a playoff series. Give that man some alley-oops.
Yeah, I think there's something to potential, and I feel like I've been asking for this since Tibbs took over, and even before that. Like, why not just run a couple more designed just
Sure.
very standard pick and rolls for this dude? Like, it seems like so much of the Knicks offense is designed around ways to actively avoid regular pick and rolls. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. I just feel like they don't run a lot of stuff, particularly for Mitch, out of that. And it's sort of just with the idea of okay, well, that's because we want Mitch to be right there when the shot goes up so that he can get that offensive rebound if it misses. And it's like, well, he could do that off of a pick and roll too. And Immanuel Quickley, the way that he keeps guys on his hip, that becomes a lot more useful when he doesn't just have to take a floater. He can also then just kind of toss it in the general direction of the hoop, and Mitch can turn that into a dunk, which is the easiest way to turn a 50% shot into a 75% shot is to just turn it into an alley-oop that is very easy for a guy like Mitch to, get when he can establish position and get behind a guy and just kind of jump over him. Cause he's still, I mean, we talked about this with Randall with, being kind of muscle bound. Mitch is obviously bigger now. He's more muscle bound than he used to be, but he's still got the hops, especially now that he's sort of found that right balance of muscle versus, enough muscle to be strong, but not so much that it keeps him with cinder block shoes now. He could still get up good enough to finish a nice alley-oop over somebody. So I too wish that they would go to that well more often and create more opportunities for it. And then just that the point guards would look more for it. And I think that the greatest challenge with that would not be IQ, but would actually be Brunson, just because of how Brunson usually operates, where it's more in ISO. And Brunson, like you said, his game is less about let me get going downhill and is more about let me do 800 different moves, get this guard stranded in the post, or this forward that I got switched on who's stranded in the post, and then do 500 pivots and eventually duck under his arm and, get a scoop layup or whatever. That's sort of the Brunson playbook more so than the IQ playbook. But even with Brunson, I mean, he's fully capable of getting downhill and getting inside and finishing a nice reverse or something. Set up more of those scenarios and allow Mitch to potentially catch some alley-oops a little more. I think that would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think real quick to Prez's point on RJ leading him, part of that is those two have good chemistry. I think part of it too is that RJ doesn't have to deal with RJ being the one spacing the floor when he's driving. RJ is the one guy who can drive with legit spacing because it's Randall, Grimes, and Brunson spotting up around him. So if the Knicks leaned into more shooting heavy lineups, like we talked about earlier, whether that's Quickley at the 2, Grimes at the 3, DiVincenzo playing some 3, Hart or RJ playing some, well, that's not really more shooting, but it's kind of similar shooting, those guys playing 4, that could get Mitch some easy lobs. And I just love to see a world where Mitch can operate with 4 out spacing. I think that could really up the Knicks offense. And because RJ, I'm sorry, this is just turning to taking shots at him, is already such a bad defender. You don't have that much to lose by having DiVincenzo out there instead of him, even though he's smaller and weaker. But Alex, I know you have some ideas on other ways Mitchell Robinson can get more points. All right, we'll be back with even more good stuff on Mitchell Robinson, how adding either one dribble moves or more aggressive seals could potentially transform his offensive game and really help out the Knicks. And then we finish up with Quentin Grimes, why he needs to expand his game off the dribble, and how the Knicks can use a two-man game between him and Julius Randle to get him more opportunities, both shooting threes and actually attacking the basket as well. But first, finally taking that summer vacation you've been planning, but dreading buying all the necessities before. I am there right now. I'm about to go to Phoenix, and there's a lot of stuff I got to buy. I need more bathing suits. You gotta have like a bag of bathing suits before you take off. It's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, or you could use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that Knicks game you've been dying to go to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps gives you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you can get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCK. When you register, just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCK. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED.
Yeah, I love my bigs, and I love traditional big man skills. And although Mitch is not, to this point in his career, well, I guess he's sort of he's operated somewhat similar. I want him to be like add a skill that's a little more 1990s, early 2000s than a lot of guys necessarily have in their bag now, but one that I think would be so useful for him. And that's just one dribble. Like when I brought this up, like we were group chatting about this, and I was like, is it crazy that I just want him to add like a one dribble baby hook? Like, take some notes from like Taj Gibson, who used to be on this team, who's 6'9" and was out there against 7-footers, and yet anytime he wanted to, could generate a baby hook just because he practiced it and had the perfect angle and knew how to use his shoulder to create that little bit of space, like, horizontally using his shoulders to just create enough space to flip it up and over the defender and create a scoring opportunity for himself when he felt that he had good positioning, even if he didn't necessarily have good enough positioning to like straight up dunk on someone or like get a layup over them. He always had that ability to like potentially score a couple points there. And I think that possibility exists for Mitch. And like, I don't think it's that far off for him. I mean, you look at how high his reach is when he reaches and fully extends himself. Like, he can almost just dump it right into the hoop if he set it up right or bank it in. I mean, I just wish that he would work on something like that. And I know that it's been like almost a running meme among Knicks fans to like watch him during the off season and like see the latest video of like, oh, here's Mitch crossing up a bunch of high schoolers, in Louisiana and like going inside and dunking, and like, oh, here's Mitch shooting some threes and stuff. I'm so far beyond caring if Mitch can ever shoot a three in his career at this point. And what I really want now is just for him to be able to shoot like a baby hook or like a one dribble dunk on the inside. I don't think he's going to be able to like duck under somebody to like get under them and get a one dribble layup or something, but just like a quick like back down one dribble, create some shack space, like use your butt, get into someone and just create a little bit of space and then dunk it, baby hook it, whatever. Like, that would be so valuable for him and as an emergency valve for the Knicks, where like if they have someone that's on the perimeter trying to create, as they do, because that's a big staple of the Knicks offense, is just kind of like having someone on the perimeter, ISO, whether it's Brunson or Randall, sometimes RJ, if that's falling apart and you've already got Mitch down in the post, like sort of waiting for that offensive rebound opportunity, to be able to just kind of emergency valve it to him and say like, crap, Mitch, there's 4 seconds left on the shot clock. Here's the ball. Mitch gets it, one dribble up, something, that at least gets you in an attempt. If they could school that into him, if he could school that skill into himself, I think that could be a huge addition to the Knicks this year and to Mitch in general, and make him a much more versatile player just with that one little skill, to be able to do that one extra little thing.
Yeah, you've been on the bandwagon forever, Alec. There were like a couple of plays, like maybe once or twice against the Cavs, but I remember in the regular season they had those games where they were just opening up with a Mitch post up and like occasionally would go in and it would look pretty good. Like he's like it is a little bit of the Toppinitis a little bit, where Mitch has been like so like scarred and beaten down by his lack of shot attempts over the years. It's like he puts a lot of pressure on himself, I think, to convert each one. And if the Knicks almost made a habit of him just getting one of those, like whether it's to open a game, whether it's to open a half, maybe that becomes a little predictable. But like, I don't know. I wouldn't mind it at all. Prez, you on that bandwagon or?
Yeah, I think there's some. It goes back to what Alex said. It's just like he's so big that he doesn't need much to get the ball above the hoop. And I mean, late in the season, anecdotally, I know he had a couple of times where we'd be in like semi-transition and he would seal his man. And most of the time, the Knicks either would not find him or see him, or they would, and they would just ignore him. And stuff like that, where it's like, okay, he's got someone smaller on him. He could just either go up or take one dribble and dunk it. Would be great. Everybody knows I got to make like an all caps tweet whenever Mitch does a fake handoff and then just drives to the hoop, which happens like twice this season. Stuff like that would be great. I definitely think it's a bit of a, what is it, like a chicken and the egg in terms of like, is his role that restricted, or does he not have the confidence to even expand it slightly? But we've now seen like you said, we've seen Taj under Tibbs. We've seen iHeart under Tibbs. So we've seen some centers do some things with the ball. Nothing crazy. And again, I hope he has the confidence to experiment a little bit. With him, I don't think he's worried about getting taken off the floor because he's the most integral. Him and Brunson are like the most integral parts of our team. But I think it's like more confidence in the true sense of it. Like can I pull this off? Forget like what the coach will do. It's just like, can I pull this off? Like, can I take one dribble and Euro step through the lane or something like that? Like, I think he legit struggles with that. And in a lot of, we all love it and joke when he does these inevitably deleted Snapchats or Instagram stories about like, man, I want some touches, and then he'll respond on Twitter being very candid, like yeah, I want some touches, but that's also not my job on this team. Like, he's very self-aware in that sense. Like, we often talk about a lot of the Knicks not being self-aware at all. He's probably hyper aware of himself on the court, if I had to guess. And that's why he's probably like, let me err on the side of just doing what I know I'm good at. But go out there and go get. You've been here a couple of years. You're allowed to get Tibbs mad every now and then. Go do a spin move here and there. Do a baby hook. Like I'm with you, Alex. Let's just expand his bag. Show the skills off. Let's see it a little bit. Dabble. Put your big toe in the water.
Yeah, and to Gavin's point, I don't even think it would make him mad. I don't even think it would make Tibbs mad. Like we see Hartenstein do this stuff. We see, we've seen Taj Gibson. Like you just said this too. Like there are other centers on the team that have done moves. Like Hartenstein all year was taking floaters. You know what I mean? And that was like a huge part of his shot diet and something he was doing all the time. So like, I don't see a world where that's like an issue for Mitch to try that out every once in a while. But
that's why I think it's a confidence thing. Like
yeah.
iHeart, like he's an elite floater shooter, and we know the Knicks have probably told him like, hey, take the floater, because I mean, Fred Katz wrote that article a while back about like the Knicks realizing that was like an efficiency thing they could exploit. But even iHeart, like we saw in the beginning of the year, we were like, where's his passing? This man had a 20% assist rate and passed like 0 times. And then in the second half of the season, it didn't get quite back to 20, but I think it was around like 13 or 14. Whereas in the first half of the season, it was literally the same as Mitch. So like we've seen iHeart get to a place where he's like, okay, I'm comfortable with my role. I'm going to start expanding a little bit what I'm doing. And I truly think that like y'all said, if Mitch confidently decided to do some stuff just like once a game, that Tibbs would be okay with it. But that's the thing. Like Tibbs is like, yo, if you're going to do it, do it. Like what's the start, the Yoda quote? There is no do or do not. There
Do
is
or do
no
not,
try.
there is no try. Yeah.
That's how he is. Like people think like, oh, Tibbs loves his defenders. He loves hustle. No, I'll tell you what Tibbs loves. It's players who confidently and aggressively do whatever their job is. Whether that's like Nate Robinson in Chicago coming off the bench, or Taj Gibson aggressively setting screens, or Mitch aggressively destroying people on the glass. Like that's the way to his heart, is like do whatever you're gonna do with confidence and aggression. So that means, Mitch, if they give you the ball on that seal, don't go up with no weak sauce. Go up like you're like, make them have to like foul you, just try to like put them through the hoop.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe part of the lingering fear there with Mitch, is that he doesn't want to get fouled, and maybe that's why he doesn't go to it quite as much. But who knows? Like he made those big free throws in the playoffs. Maybe that changes things for him a little bit. And I saw like it was either him or his trainer tweeted out. Presumably it's been every offseason. That was one of his focuses this offseason. So we'll see if he can get back up to that high 60s. I mean, wow, I'd throw a party if he got to 70%. But Prez, to your point on Tibbs wanting guys to do what they do well confidently, let me introduce Quentin Grimes. Maybe some more creation. Even though this is going to be the last thing we talk about on this three-parter, this was actually probably the number one skill I wanted to talk about coming into this show. He put up great numbers post All-Star break: 14 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 51% from the field, 45% from the three, 79% foul shooting. But that was essentially without unlocking any greater level of self-creation. Like Prez, you referenced Fred Katz before. He had that great stat earlier in the season that Grimes led the NBA in blow-by rate. You said it perfectly, going 100 miles per hour every single time. He also shot 71% at the rim, which was 84th percentile for shooting guards. The issue was, especially as the season went on, it started feeling like he would predetermine that he was going to pass instead of shoot. And I think defenses started taking him a little bit less seriously on drives, and he clearly lost some confidence on drives as the season went along. And if there's a version of Grimes that can combine the volume three-point shooting at above 40% and the ability to confidently get to the rim, and he got way less attempts at it, but he might be the best like dump off passer to like whether it's Mitch or Hartenstein like on this team. Like I think he probably pretty clear cut is. There's a lot more to his game that he can unlock. And the biggest thing for me, and I don't think this is really an issue in the regular season just because the Knicks have so much scoring depth now, like he's pretty clear cut the fourth option in the starting lineup, is that in the playoffs, like if he gets a Duncan Robinson on him, that he can do something one-on-one in those types of matchups. And it kind of gets back to the thing, like we can, like similar to RJ Barrett, where we can always reference who a guy was as a prospect. And at a certain point, like if they don't show it in the NBA, or if they don't show it in a certain context in the NBA, you kind of have to give up on it and say like, all right, like he might just not be willing to do that, or he might not have the confidence to do that, or he might not have the permission to do that. But Prez is someone who kind of views players through that lens, like what they did at younger levels, like how that can ultimately translate to the league. Like I'm not saying like he's going to start getting 10 isolations in per game. And like, I know this is kind of like two separate things I'm bringing up, but do you see like a little bit more self-creation potential for him? And maybe even more importantly, do you see opportunities in the Knicks offense where he can get to that?
I think the latter question is the more important one. I think he can, I am a firm believer that he can do much more than what he's shown as a scorer and a passer, particularly if he gets opportunities to operate not out of the corner. So like going to the middle of the court, either from the wing or from the top of the court, getting a screen. I think there's a lot he could do. He's so athletic. I think he'll be a good mid-range shooter if given a chance to shoot those. He's a good passer. The decision making is something that we need to see him kind of prove, but he hasn't had those opportunities. And is he going to get them? I don't know. Maybe. That's one of those things that like we know Tibbs is more inclined to make big adjustments to the offense in tandem with the front office between seasons rather than during the season. That's when the front office really sits down and says, okay, this is what the numbers say. We're going to change this, this, and that. We're going to sign these players. We're going to take these shots out of Julius's diet. We're going to take these shots out of RJ's diet, blah, blah, blah. That's when they make changes to players' roles and shots and stuff like that. So it kind of wouldn't surprise me if they decided, all right, we have to give Grimes a little bit more to chew on here because we might be leaving stuff on the table for him and therefore for us. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they were like, nah, we got our main 4 ball handlers and that's enough. So unless there's injury, if there's injury, then Grimes can cook. But, Grimes' primary role is still going to be what he is last year. I could see that happening as well. To me, the middle ground would be like, even if, he doesn't need high PNR reps, but like, let this man get some handoffs so he could come shooting off like Julius used to do with Fournier all the time. And between Julius and Hartenstein, it shouldn't be that risky of a thing to introduce into the offense. He didn't shoot particularly well off handoffs or screens last year, but the sample was so small that I'm not really worried about that. He wasn't even in the top 100 players in the NBA in terms of how often he got chances to shoot off of screens and handoffs. Not raw numbers, but like frequency, like percentage of possessions. So that is an insane thing to me for a shooter of his caliber. Like, there's random dudes like OG Anunoby who are like way higher. And I know like Nick Nurse offense is like terrorism actually. So like that's not good that OG Anunoby had some chances to do that. But my point is like there's so much gray area between, like, nobody's saying like, okay, we about to give him the Buddy Hield shot package here for 30 minutes a game. Just like almost like what we do with IQ. Like IQ has a little bit more freedom and gets chances to come off screens and things like that, much more than Grimes, which, maybe he's earned that from Tibbs, but I hope Grimes gets a chance to do that as well.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I hadn't thought about that at all, but that is such easy money. Like that was literally the Fournier thing you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was like the money play that literally made him the highest 3-point shooting player in Knicks history in a bad season, all in all. And like Grimes could do that so easily. And that's such a low lift thing to add to the game plan that in theory should work fine. I mean, if Grimes can't hit those shots, then that's something where you go to him and say, well, figure it out then, because you're going to need that throughout your career. Like if you want to go on this trajectory where you could eventually become, a guy that like we've often put on this show, we've put him in a category where we say if things worked out as best as humanly possible for him, he could like end up Klay Thompson-esque, you know what I mean? Like that level of guy that just like can consistently bang threes no matter how you get them. Like as long as you put him in a situation to take a three, he can do it. And that's like such an easy way. And that's not necessarily, like you said, self-created, but it's still a way to get him more attempts and get him more involved in the offense. Now, granted, like if the playoffs are any indication, like against the Heat, like how much more involved can you get him than how involved he was at times down the stretch of that? But there are better ways than necessarily just like driving and kicking to him every single time and saying, we'll make this exact same style of shot every single time. Like having multiple types of shots that he can go after and, establish a rhythm with could be very beneficial. As far as like the self-creation aspect of it, I do think, I'm kind of with you there, Gavin. Like, I think that it would be useful to explore it. I think it's going to be difficult. Like, I think that we're going to have a really good idea, like with most things, on what the Knicks view Grimes' role going into this season as based off how things go in like the first 2 preseason games. Because we often see that Tibbs comes out firing on all cylinders with exactly what he wants the team to do from like minute 1 of the preseason. And he will run these guys like even in their normal rotations until like the fourth quarter, like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. He'll be like, all right, fine, we'll throw the end of the bench guys in and get them a couple minutes, I guess. But like until then, we're treating this like a real game. And this is going to go exactly like how a real game would go. And like, I think that, I think if we see Grimes maybe getting some more opportunities to initiate a bit, And especially in lieu of like IQ starting, I think that could be really beneficial to have him, you know, screw around a little bit on the perimeter and just see like, hey, can he like run a quick pick and roll and, punish guys for not getting, skinny around screens or whatever? Like, can he, actually do that like in a real NBA setting? Like, that's not just like summer league or something. Um, I think that would be a great way to assess like what do we really have in this guy, and is there another potential level to this, or is he just going to be a phenomenal, spot up 3-point shooter that can also put the ball on the deck a little bit, like to attack a closeout, but not necessarily a guy that we trust to fully initiate things like in a half court offense, like they would even like a Josh Hart in spot minutes or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think what we see in preseason could potentially be indicative of whether that's going to be in the cards or not.
Yeah, I just think the handoffs point from Prez is such a great one because he's just like he's a good enough shooter that like a lot of teams are good at like have guys like go over on that, and that's going to give him a step going to the rim or like a switch with the big. And like we saw, like he has the juice to beat those matchups. Like when he's at the rim, like this is what shocked me, or maybe not shocked me because he showed some of it as a rookie, but he's a really explosive leaper. Like he collides with guys in the air, and he usually wins those matchups. And he can like double pump, and he's obviously very right hand heavy, but like he finishes great with that right hand. So like, and like maybe he's like worked on his left a little bit this offseason. Like there's a lot of room there for him to be like a really efficient scorer. And I want to see him have a season where he has like, I don't know, like 15 games where he has over 22 or 24 points, like where he is like a key piece. And there's so many mouths to feed on this team. And it might take a trade again, like whether that's him going out or him staying to like really clarify his role. But I always say it, like he, like outside of Brunson is probably the guy that I think has and this isn't really a controversial statement, like has the clearest vision on like what a championship contending version of the Knicks would look like. And I think this is kind of the year where we want to start seeing him take more steps towards that. But Alex, Prez, unless you guys had anything else, I think we can wrap up here and maybe just finish up by thanking Prez for all of his time. And buddy, if you could just tell everyone where they can find all your amazing work. Prez, if you want to.
I forgot I was on mute. My bad.
You're good.
I was gonna say
you're like I'm not your buddy. Call me something else.
You can find me at _Presidente on Twitter. You can find me at Presidente without an underscore on Blue Sky, just in case the other ship goes up in flames.
What about on Threads? We got a Threads handle too.
We don't have a Threads handle yet. I'm still on the fence about that, so you can't find me on Threads. But generally, I'm not really doing anything. This is like the Prez off season because the draft is done. So I'm just kind of sitting on my butt doing nothing until FIBA starts.
as you have earned with all the draft work that ultimately was all for the Knicks to not trade into the draft or make any draft picks this year. So good old Knicks. But look forward to whatever you got cooking after FIBAs and as we get into the season. Of course, you could also check Prez out on Pod Strickland once a week as well on the Friday edition. So check that out as well on the Strickland Podcast Network. But until next time, thank you everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed this 3-part episode where we went into all these different skills. And until next time, we'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.